It happened 3 weeks before my brother's court date. We were all gathered at my parents' house for dinner: Mom, Dad, my sister, her boyfriend, and me. The conversation started off light. Someone brought up the news, someone else complained about gas prices. But then Dad cleared his throat, leaned forward, and dropped the question like a bomb. "So, are you going to sell your car or not?" I froze, fork halfway to my mouth. He was staring at me like I owed him an answer yesterday. My car wasn't new or fancy. It was a 6-year-old sedan that got me to and from work every day. I bought it myself. Maintained it myself. Paid off every damn cent without help. It wasn't just transportation, it was freedom. Security. The one thing I had that no one else had touched. "I'm sorry," I said, careful with my words. "But I can't sell it. I need it for work." There was a pause. Then the air shifted. The sound of a fork clinking against a plate. My sister inhaled sharply. Mom stared down at her napkin like it had become the most fascinating thing in the world. And then, bang! Dad slammed his palm against the table so hard the salt shaker jumped. "You've always been ungrateful," he snapped. "We supported you through everything, and now, when your brother needs help, you act like we're asking for your liver." My brother, the golden child. Who'd been arrested, again, for fraud. Who drained every dollar they gave him. Who they still called. Just misunderstood. "He needs us," Dad continued. "He needs you." I looked around the table. No one met my eyes. Not my sister, who once borrowed money from me and never paid it back. Not my mom, who used to say, "Just keep your head down and everything will be okay." Not even my brother, who looked at me like I owed him this, like helping him was just another box to check under. Family duty. It was the same pattern. I stay quiet. They take. I sacrifice. They pretend it's normal. But this time, I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I looked my father in the eye and said, "No." And that's when he lunged across the table like he was going to hit me. He didn't. My sister's boyfriend grabbed his arm in time. But the damage was already done. They all looked at me like I'd set the house on fire. Like I was the one tearing the family apart. But no one asked what selling that car would mean for me. No one cared if I lost my job or missed rent. They didn't just want my help. They expected my sacrifice. I used to think being the quiet one in the family was a blessing. No one paid much attention to me, which meant I could move through life without stirring up trouble. While my brother was the storm, loud, wild, destructive, I was the calm sea. The dependable one. The one who didn't ask for much. The one who got straight A's, never missed curfew, and didn't bring drama into the house. I thought that meant I was loved. Respected even. It took me years to realize it just made me useful. I remember being 13 when my parents pulled me into the kitchen and said they needed to borrow from my college fund. I didn't even know what that meant at the time. I just nodded while they said it was temporary. That it was for a business opportunity. For my brother. A used car lot. He didn't know anything about cars, but Dad swore he had the drive to learn. It failed in 3 months. No one ever mentioned the money again. Not when I got acceptance letters from schools I couldn't afford to attend. Not when I had to take out loans. Not when I worked 2 jobs just to make rent in college. And certainly not when I graduated without so much as a card or dinner. My brother, meanwhile, came home twice a year, always with a new scheme. Once it was a podcast he said would make millions. Then a crypto investment. Then a lawsuit he was unfairly targeted in. Each time, my parents opened their wallets. Each time, they turned to me when things went south. Not for money, I didn't have any, but for silence. "Don't make it worse. He's struggling. You don't understand how hard it is for him." But I did understand. I understood that every mess he made would eventually be my responsibility to absorb. If not directly, then emotionally. I became the buffer. The one who patched things up after he stormed through. I was the one they expected to keep smiling, keep showing up for dinner, keep pretending we were a normal family. I learned early that speaking up meant being labeled difficult. I found out that saying no, even politely, was met with cold shoulders and guilt-tripping. So I stopped pushing back. I became the version of myself they needed, quiet, compliant, invisible. When I bought my car, it was the first real thing that was mine. A used Honda Civic, nothing flashy, but it got me to work. I was working 2 jobs then, sometimes 3. Delivering food late at night, writing freelance articles during the day. Saving every dime so I wouldn't have to ask anyone for anything. And when I finally had enough, I paid in cash. I remember driving it home, proud, nervous, holding the keys like they were made of gold. When I pulled into my parents' driveway, Dad barely looked up from his phone. "Is that yours?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, smiling. "I bought it myself." "Huh." He nodded. "Make sure you change the oil every 3,000 miles. That was it. No. Congratulations. No. We're proud of you. Just an instruction, like I'd borrowed it from someone and needed to return it in one piece. I didn't realize it at the time, but that was the moment something shifted in me. I started noticing things I'd ignored before. Like how my sister never got scolded for skipping family events. How my brother's mistakes were met with second, third, and 10th chances. How I was the only one expected to explain myself, even when I hadn't done anything wrong. When my brother was arrested, the story changed again. It wasn't his fault, it was a misunderstanding. The police had it out for him. The woman was exaggerating. The charges would go away. And even if they didn't, he didn't mean any harm. I asked what exactly he was accused of. Dad got quiet. Mom told me not to dig into it. "Just trust us," she said. "He's innocent." But I'd read the article. I saw the charges: fraud, coercion, identity theft. Not petty mistakes. Not youthful errors. Crimes. Serious ones. And still, they were ready to empty their savings again. Mortgage the house if they had to. Asked me to contribute. That's when I started getting the texts. First from Mom. "He's scared. He needs support right now." Then from my sister. "You're the only one who's stable. Can't you just help this once?" And finally from Dad. "We need you to sell the car. It's not like you can't get another one." I ignored them at first. But the next time I showed up for dinner, they brought it up like it was already decided. "Your car's worth at least $7,000, Dad said. That'll cover a chunk of the lawyer fees." I told them no. Calmly, respectfully. But the look on their faces, it was like I'd just declared war. "You always think you're better than us," my sister snapped. Mom sighed. "We didn't raise you to be selfish." But the worst came from Dad. "You were always the quiet one," he said, voice low, like he was disappointed. "That's why we chose you." That sentence stuck in my head for days. That's why we chose you. Not because they loved me. Not because they believed in me. But because I was quiet. I wouldn't fight back. I wouldn't say no. They didn't see me as a person. They saw me as a resource. After that night, after the yelling, the accusation, the barely restrained swing, I stopped responding to their texts. I didn't block them. I just let the messages pile up. "You're being dramatic. You're tearing this family apart. We raised you better than this." What they didn't know was that I'd already started my own investigation. I wasn't a lawyer, but I had enough sense to search court records, media articles, and online forums. My brother wasn't just facing charges, he was already on thin ice from previous incidents. This wasn't his first fraud allegation. It was just the first time the evidence was undeniable. He'd convinced several older women to invest in a startup that didn't exist. One of them lost her retirement fund. Another had to move in with her daughter. There were emails, contracts, voice messages. His lawyer was trying to argue entrapment, but the case was ugly. And my parents wanted me to pay for that defense? I didn't sleep much those first few nights. I kept replaying Dad's words. "That's why we chose you." It hit me like a punch to the chest. Because it was true. They never asked him to sacrifice. They never asked her. It was always me. The dependable one. The quiet one. But quiet didn't mean weak. And I wasn't going to let them bully me into guilt again. I called an attorney. Not for him, for me. I wanted to know if there was a way to protect myself. If this spiraled, if Dad tried to co-sign something in my name, if they tried to guilt-trip me into financial responsibility, could I be legally tied to anything? I had to be sure. She told me to gather everything. Emails. Texts. Anything that suggested coercion. And she reminded me of something I hadn't thought about. Freedom isn't just about saying no. It's about knowing how to defend that no. So I began documenting. I took screenshots of every message. I backed up old conversations. I searched my bank records, highlighted the times money had been borrowed and never returned. I even requested a copy of the police report from his most recent arrest. And then I found it. A detail buried in the case file. One of the victims had submitted an audio recording, my brother bragging about how, "Even if this goes south, my folks will cover me." He laughed. "Hell, my little brother will probably sell his damn car. He worships them too much to say no." I listened to that clip 6 times. Something in me broke, then rebuilt stronger. The next day, I called the victim's attorney. I introduced myself. I explained who I was. I said I wasn't there to protect him. I was there to make sure they had everything they needed to bury him. It wasn't just about the car anymore. It was about every time they used me. Every time they chose him over truth. Every time I was silent so they could stay comfortable. 2 weeks later, I was subpoenaed. As a witness. Dad lost his mind. He showed up at my apartment. Pounded on the door. Screamed through the hallway. "You're testifying against your own blood? He's your brother! You're no son of mine!" I called the police. Calmly. Quietly. Just like they always taught me to be. When the officers arrived, he tried to act composed. But the damage was done. The neighbors saw. The apartment manager saw. The police took a statement and warned him not to come back. Still, I got one more text from him that night. "Whatever happens to this family, it's on you." But it wasn't. It was on them. For choosing the wrong son. For defending a liar. For thinking love meant loyalty, even in the face of abuse. At the trial, I sat in the back. I watched my brother twist in his seat as the prosecution played that recording, the one where he laughed about me. Where he called me a guaranteed bailout. I watched my dad bury his face in his hands. Mom cried. My sister kept glancing toward me like I'd betrayed them. But they never looked at him the way they looked at me. He got 5 years. White-collar prison, cushy but real. The judge called his actions calculated manipulation of vulnerable individuals. Said the only reason he didn't get more time was because several victims had recovered part of their funds, thanks to someone stepping forward with evidence. They didn't know it was me. Not officially. But I saw it in Dad's eyes as we passed in the hallway. He knew. And for once, he didn't say a word. I kept my car. It's a little dented now, a little older. But I drive it with pride. Not because it's worth much, but because it was the line I refused to cross. The thing that made me stand still while everyone else demanded I bow. I didn't sell it. I sold them out instead. After the sentencing, there was silence. No calls. No texts. No half-hearted invitations to Sunday dinners I wouldn't have accepted anyway. Just silence. The kind of vacuum you feel more than hear. A vacuum that once was filled with obligation, guilt, and the constant need to explain myself. I didn't miss it. I went back to work, stayed late, picked up freelance clients on the weekends. For the first time in years, my energy wasn't being drained by emotional landmines. I could breathe. I could sleep. I could focus. I wasn't waiting for the next family emergency. That really just meant cover for your brother again. A month after the trial, my mom called. I didn't pick up the first time. Or the second. But on the third ring, I answered. She didn't yell. Didn't cry. Her voice was quiet. I just wanted to say, we didn't know how bad it was. We didn't see it. I stayed quiet. She continued. I'm not saying what you did was right. But maybe it was necessary. It wasn't an apology. But it also wasn't the usual script. It was a crack. And cracks let light in. Over the next few months, we spoke a handful of times. She never asked me to come home. Never brought up the car or the trial or the fact that Dad refused to say my name. She just asked if I was eating well. If my job was okay. She even asked about the car once, chuckling awkwardly. Still holding up? Still mine, I said. She laughed. Soft. Sad. I didn't ask about my brother. I already knew. He was trying to appeal. Claiming poor legal representation. The usual routine. But the victims had banded together and created a public support group online. They shared updates, photos, memories. One of them emailed me anonymously. Someone from your family must have helped. Whoever it was, thank you. You gave us closure. I didn't reply. But I kept the message. Read it on hard days. It reminded me that doing the right thing didn't always feel good, but it mattered. Eventually, I moved. A better job offer came through in another city, more money, better team, room to grow. I packed my life into a few boxes, filled up the tank of my now-worn Civic, and drove out of the neighborhood that had once been my whole world. I didn't tell anyone I was leaving. 6 months later, I went back. Not to stay, just to pick something up. A box of old documents I'd left in my parents' garage. I texted my mom beforehand. She said she'd leave it out on the porch. But when I pulled into the driveway, my dad was there. Sitting on a lawn chair. Staring at the street like he'd been waiting. I killed the engine. Got out. Walked past him. He didn't look up. Not until I bent down to pick up the box. Then, quietly, he said, "You embarrassed us." I turned. "You chose to be embarrassed. I chose to tell the truth." He didn't argue. Just stared ahead. I should have left it at that. But something in me needed to say the next part. Not for him, for me. "You raised me to take care of things. To protect the family name." "I did." He flinched. "Just not the way you wanted." And then I walked away. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't look back. I just opened my trunk, placed the box inside, and drove off, windows down, music on low, heart unclenched for the first time in years. There was no grand reconciliation. No healing moment where everyone hugged and cried and became a Hallmark special. But I didn't need that. I had peace. And sometimes, peace looks like a quiet apartment where no one calls you to fix what they broke. Sometimes it's driving a car that no one else paid for. Sometimes it's the simple freedom of being able to say, "No." My father never apologized. But I didn't need him to. Because in the end, I wasn't the one who betrayed the family. I was the one who saved it. There's something people rarely talk about when it comes to families: the quiet child. The one who doesn't argue. The one who folds themselves small so others can take up more space. The one who carries guilt that doesn't belong to them, and who learns early that love, in some homes, is conditional, based on what you give, not who you are. I was that child. For years I told myself that being dependable was a virtue. That staying quiet was strength. That sacrificing what I needed for the sake of family harmony made me a good son, a good sibling, a good person. But here's the truth I had to learn the hard way. Being quiet isn't the same as being respected. Being useful isn't the same as being loved. And loyalty without boundaries is just a slow form of self-erasure. Families can be beautiful, supportive, healing. But they can also be breeding grounds for expectation, manipulation, and unspoken hierarchies. In mine, love came with fine print: don't question, don't resist, don't break the image. My brother broke the law, but I was the one expected to fix it. Not because I had the power to, but because I was the easiest to corner. The least likely to fight back. The one who wouldn't make a scene. What I've learned is this: when you set a boundary, the people who benefit from you having none will always call you selfish. But setting that boundary was the single most important thing I've ever done. It didn't just save me, it shattered a cycle. A generational echo of blame and favoritism and selective silence. It made space for accountability. It gave me the freedom to stop surviving my family and start building a life of my own. It taught me that it's okay to walk away from people who only see you as a tool. It's okay to keep what's yours. It's okay to say no, even if your voice shakes. Especially if your voice shakes. Sometimes we think forgiveness is the highest form of love. But accountability is love, too. And truth? Truth is the most loving thing you can give to a family that's lost its way. So to the quiet ones, the peacemakers, the fixers, the invisible glue holding things together. You're not selfish for wanting peace that doesn't require your pain. You're not cruel for refusing to carry someone else's consequences. And you are not wrong for finally choosing yourself. I didn't sell my car. I didn't sell my peace. And for the first time in my life, I didn't sell me.